Hi everyone, we are working in section 7.2, not 7.3, and this is part 3, so it's the third of our videos on this section, and in this piece we're going to prove some identities. We did some identities in 7.1, we also did some simplifying, but these are going to actually be ones that have that sum or difference formulas involved. So we are going to prove this first one, that the cosine of alpha plus beta plus the cosine of alpha minus beta is supposed to be equal to 2 times the cosine of alpha cosine of beta. One thing is when we are working with these sum and difference formulas, if you think of it, I'm going to put them up here again, it is easier to probably go this direction than to try to build something here so that we can go back. So for example, trying to take this and write it in the forms that you see here, a lot more work. So we're most of the time going to start with those sum and difference pieces and use the formulas and see what happens. So I'm going to pull the formula for that cosine of alpha plus beta, and I'm going to start on this side and use those formulas first of all and see what we get happening. So the cosine of alpha plus beta, right off the formula sheet, is the cosine of alpha cosine of beta and minus the sine of alpha sine of beta. And to that we are supposed to add, so I'm going to just kind of continue because I'm running out of paper. So the cosine of alpha, cosine of beta, and then plus the sine of alpha, sine of beta. So we're kind of wrapping around a little bit here. So now we'll notice that I do have these two things. There's two of them and one positive, one negative. So this does fall right out. And we get that 2 cosine of alpha cosine of beta. So it worked very nicely. All right, here's another one. Let's say the sine of x minus pi is supposed to be equal to the negative sine of x. And we could do this one graphically. You know, you could graph this guy and see if it is that, but we're going to use our difference formula here, the sine of x minus pi, and see what happens. So the sine of the difference is going to be the sine of that first one, cosine of that pi, minus cosine of x, sine of pi. And now we have to remember what the cosine of pi is and what the sine of pi is. So I'll have the sine of x, and the cosine of pi happens to be -1. You could do that using your triangles, remembering that cosine is over here. There's pi. Cosine is going to be your x component. Sine is going to be your y component. So the sine of pi is 0. So we do get that negative sine of x. Okay, one more so we can kind of practice here. And we have the tangent of x minus the tangent of y equal to the sine of x minus y all over cosine x cosine y. Okay. I again am going to start with this piece here, or I could start that way as well. It really doesn't matter. So let's take this one first of all. Let's do that sine of x minus y, and that's over cosine x cosine y. Here I get from my formula, this is the sine of x, sine of x cosine of y minus the cosine of x sine of y all over cosine x cosine y. I'm going to break this up into two fractions because I'm keeping an eye on where I'm going. So I'm going to have the sine of x cosine of y over that cosine x cosine y minus cosine x sine y all over cosine x cosine y. We will notice that this cosines of y cancel, and I'm left with sine of x over cosine of x. And then I see on this one those cosine of x's cancel, and I'm left with sine of y over cosine of y, which happens to be the tangent of x minus the tangent of y. If we had started on this side, we would have done these steps in reverse. So we could have then changed, here's our sine over our sines over cosines. This would have been getting that common denominator, putting them together as one fraction, and then recognizing that this was the sign of that difference. So you could have gone either direction on this one and gotten there. So here's a couple identity problems. Hopefully these videos are helping you. If you are getting stuck, please by all means send me emails, ask me questions through WebAssign, and I'll see you in the next section.